Interior Minister Gilad Erdan from the Likud to give the government's Likud's point of view. Minister Gilad Erdan.
Distinguished ambassadors, consuls, and diplomatic staff, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all and welcome to Jerusalem. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you this morning, and it is a real treat to get to meet such a prestigious audience from around the world. Many of you are making Israel your temporary home for the next few months or years. So, for those of you who have recently arrived, well, you're in luck. Elections are around the corner. But for the others here, the 2015 election marked the second or even third time you will witness the Israeli people as they go to vote. What can I say? It's never a boring day here. You have all been assigned to a pretty uneventful country. I'm sure that you understand this better each and every day. Joking aside, even though it wasn't so funny, I knew that this would work. Israel today faces serious challenges that put us in a unique situation, one that constantly requires us to manage and work towards security. For our people, for our borders, and for our region. The complex sets of challenges in today's Middle East are far more threatening than what was once prophesied as the new Middle East. Former President Peres is no longer here, I assume. This new Middle East is in fact a brutal reality, one in which hate has no borders. Just look at the alarming spread and reach of the Islamic State. Radical extremists have struck in New York, Washington, and Boston. American and European journalists are being viciously brutalized and beheaded. And ISIS has openly declared that they will not stop their hateful reign of terror until the flag of Islam is hanging over the White House. Despite US war plans' near-daily bombardments of ISIS targets from the air, the American administration has realized that this is not a challenge that will simply disappear into thin air. We all support the efforts to stop and defeat ISIS, but let us not fool ourselves. This is a challenge which will take years to overcome. We have long said that by not joining us in Israel in the fight against radical Islam, the battle would someday come to the West. Sadly, friends, that day is here. Israel is on the front lines of this radical Islam. Hamas and Hezbollah are no smaller than ISIS, and their ideologies are no different in their essence. Take a look in our own neighborhood. Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood distort democracy to destroy democracy. We abide by the laws of the Geneva Convention. They manipulate them. We use our weapons to protect our children. They use their children to protect their weapons. We see our peoples as human beings. They, and you all know it, use their people as human shields. So let me be clear. We are in this together. And together we must make clear that this is not only Israel's battle. This is a battle for free societies. This is a battle for democracy. This is a battle for civilization and the values we all cherish. The challenges facing Israel today are many. One which I personally dealt with recently, and one which will continue to pose a challenge for this country as it does for many other countries around the world, is illegal immigration. Here too, Israel is in a unique situation with a stable economy and the region's only thriving democracy. It's no wonder why thousands want to come here in search for a better future. We're surrounded by populations living in poverty and under brutal regimes. And let me be clear, there is no question that these migrants are fleeing hardship and see Israel as their savior. As a people whose history is rooted in victimhood, fleeing murderous regimes and seeking a national homeland, as a country that since 1948 has been able to serve as a place of refuge for persecuted Jews from around the world, we have an obligation to deal with these infiltrators in the best way we can. And we have. Israel has dealt with hundreds of thousands of migrants streaming in from all of our borders who are escaping tyranny and destitution. Syrians, yes, Syrians who are victims of the ruthless civil war there, have received medical care in our hospital, and they continue to get medical care. Days after Operation Protective Edge, Israeli doctors operated on the daughter of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in one of the country's best hospitals. Some Israelis were furious with this. To provide medical care to the daughter of the leader of one of the most inhumane terror groups, who just a few days earlier aimed to murder innocent Israeli civilians? It was unbelievable for some. Yet, she received the best medical care there is. It's pretty hypocritical when you see how international organizations such as the United Nations and others bully Israel on human rights and migrants when the entire Middle East is burning with daily torture and abuse, millions displaced, running from massacres. And for those seeking jobs and a better future while entering countries illegally. That certainly is not a phenomenon unknown to many of you and the countries you represent. Our southern border was an open border to hundreds of thousands of infiltrators and job seekers, with a growing rate of illegal entries. We were compelled to seal this border. As Interior Minister and a member of the Security Cabinet, it is my duty to ensure a safe and secure Israel while confronting the threats that lay on our horizon. And that is why, with great effort, we passed legislation that would hopefully guarantee security to our residents in south of Tel Aviv and an attempt to return to their normal lives. The amendment gives more leniencies to the migrants and coincides with international regulations. This was important for Israel to humanly and properly deal with the issue and find a solution that would abide by international norms. And while I take into account the circumstances in which some of these people may have fled their countries, I first and foremost understand our duty to the Israeli people. It's our duty in government to be able to look them in the eyes and help them get their former lives back. We, just like every other country in this room this morning, have a right to control our borders, and we all hold and maintain this commitment for the well-being of our citizens. While many of us have shared challenges that face our countries, let me tell you this. Israel endures and is subject to daily threats and dangers that no other democracy in the world experiences or abides. Therefore, as we stretch our hand in peace, we must ensure that there is someone on the other side to embrace it. Prime Minister Netanyahu has accepted the two-state solution and has publicly recognized the need for a Palestinian state. But the persistent unilateral steps from the Palestinian side actually push peace backwards. We hope for peace. We yearn for peace. We pray for peace every day. But genuine peace, a negotiated peace that ends the conflict, will only be attained with meaningful and measurable concessions from both sides. Recent calls from European states to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state achieve the opposite. It encourages the Palestinians to harden their positions and not to compromise. Pursuing recognition in international establishment, just this week the ICC, and promoting one-sided initiatives in the Security Council is counterproductive to a negotiated, long-term, peaceful solution. It is vital that your countries will support peace that is forged through negotiations and concessions. A peace that is rooted in solid security arrangement and not in absurd and empty declarations. Thus, any realistic two-state solution will require the input of responsible regional players, particularly our two neighbors, Egypt and Jordan. And most importantly, it must be based on our Middle Eastern reality. We must see the region as it is, not as we wish it to be. Unfortunately, that new Middle East that was once romanticized, dare I say, fantasized, that new Middle East, the subsequent Arab Spring or whatever name we want to call it, turned into a turbulent, volatile and explosive region. The violence in Iraq, Syria, Libya, in Sinai has nothing to do with our conflict here. US President Obama said it clearly on the podium at the UN this year, asserting that the situation in the region, and I quote, should cure anybody of the illusion that the Arab-Israeli conflict is the main source of problems in the region, end quote. Year after year, government after government, Israel has made countless concessions, and still we live under constant threat of terror. My party, the Likud party, and I heard that former Minister Lapid mentioned it, was the first to sign a peace treaty with Egypt, giving up land for peace. We evacuated the Sinai Desert, dismantled the Yamit settlements, and despite, think of it, and despite the ongoing counter-terrorism efforts being undertaken by the Egyptian forces, we still face a host of jihadist organizations, some directly affiliated with Al-Qaeda, in an area of land Israel vacated, yes, for peace. And today, even Eilat, Israel's top tourist destination and southernmost city, is under constant terror threats. The Oslo Accords in the 90s, in which we gave up land for peace, turned the West Bank into a hotbed of terror. Or the Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon, which was supposed to demilitarize the region, but instead enabled Hezbollah to fire thousands of rockets at our cities in 2006. Today, they have hundreds of thousands more, of course. Israel gave up the land, but it has hardly achieved peace in return. Just imagine, friends, if we had left the Golan Heights, as the entire international community and some Israeli leaders believed we should have done, where would the Al-Nusra Front be now? Al-Qaeda's Syrian branch would be dipping their feet in the Kinneret today. And in Gaza, there were those who swore that by leaving Gush Katif and all the Jewish settlements, we would improve our relations with the Palestinians. And the international community, of course. They told us it would open the gates for trade, that it would boost the Palestinian economy. Every settlement was evacuated. Every Israeli was removed. Each and every one. You may recall, the Gaza Strip was to become the Singapore of the Middle East. But, ladies and gentlemen, 15,000 rockets later, 3 costly military operations later, land for peace once again became land for terror. Once again, our hands of peace have been met with the hands of war. Israel faces many challenges, many of which are global threats that demand global responses. Radicalism and terrorism don't stop at borders and are not confined to this region. And that is why we all have a great obligation to ensure that the regional bully, the global menace, the Islamic Republic of Iran, does not acquire nuclear weapons. We cannot allow this to happen. Each and every one of our partners in this room should understand this. Time is running out. Indeed, no deal is better than a bad deal. But you should understand that Israel has seen firsthand the terror that the Iranians have unleashed through the regime's violent terrorist proxies in the region. They are not only building an atomic bomb, but they are the patron for the terror groups brutalizing our people. It is imperative that world leaders take this stark reality into account in their talks with this ruthless regime, a regime that is a clear and present threat to the security of the free world. Friends, these are dynamic times. Unfortunately, there were those serving in leading roles in government who preferred putting their individual political interest before the national good. A country cannot be led when its coalition partners join Israel's greatest critics in the international community, rather than work in the government they themselves are part of. With yesterday's news of a Livni-Herzog unity deal, it's clear today that these elections will be, first of all, between those who continue to give up land, risking Israel's security without getting anything in return, versus those who are willing to compromise, who are willing to recognize a Palestinian state, but only when the Palestinians themselves recognize Israel as the Jewish homeland, and only for peace that will last. Prime Minister Netanyahu could have served as the leader of this country for another 3 years. But he was left with no choice but to ask the Israeli people for their mandate once again, so that we can build a more stable coalition government, one that will work together and combat the many challenges facing our country. Together, with your support and friendship, we can combat our shared challenges and strive for a peaceful future in this region and worldwide. Allow me to wish you a fruitful and interesting conference today, and happy winter holidays to you and your families. Thank you very much.